Growing up, my mom and I were really close. I hung on her every word. And I will never forget the day in my early 20s, I realized that she is a narcissist and that my entire life had been a lie. When I was bringing up some of my concerns and I had just started taking some of my psychology classes and my research science classes, I told her about the things I was learning and how some of the things that she did growing up to me were kind of abusive. And her response to that was that my classes were like baby counseling classes. They weren't real counseling classes. They weren't real psychology classes like hers were at her graduate school. And I didn't know what I was talking about. When I was younger, I had a coach that would give me free lessons in my extracurriculars and really took me under her wing. My illness at the time was getting in the way of me performing this extracurricular activity as well as I used to be able to. And there was some tension between my coach and I. I was dealing with a lot of grief about that. And my mom, just having gotten started with her internship to be a licensed therapist, prints out handouts, gives them to me and my coach, and sits us down on a couch and starts to try to facilitate a therapy session between the two of us. Completely ruined my relationship with that coach. And the coach told my mom, I don't want to humiliate you in front of your daughter, but it is completely inappropriate for you to try to do this. It's belittling. It's pedantic for you to come in here with handouts and your therapy notebook, and you didn't need to come into my house in my living room on my couch and try to facilitate a therapy session. And that was one relationship my mom stole from me. Between kicking me out and then moving me into an apartment that was owned by a predator, to telling me I was too much to deal with after an assault, to stealing over $10,000 from me and then criticizing me for not having any money. And the stories get even worse from there. I'm going to make this episode a bit of an open letter to my mother and also just a dialogue about growing up and decentering your parents and resilience and learning to move on in your life and build something beautiful for yourself. So without further ado, welcome to Do You Want to Hear Something Awful? My name is Allison, and today on the podcast, I'm doing a little bit of a different style of episode where I'm just showing up as my raw, honest, unscripted self and going to share some stories. If you like this episode and enjoy this podcast, feel free to please follow us, subscribe, rate, comment, all of the things, and we will go ahead and dive right in. Just as a content warning, this episode will discuss sexual assault and eating disorders, so if that's something that makes you uncomfortable, feel free to click off this episode and go listen to another one. One of the first situations that I clearly remember realizing that my mother was a narcissist after taking my psychology classes and learning a little bit more about people and the human psyche was when I was sexually molested at my private Christian school. I was absolutely distraught afterwards, and I remember crying and talking to my mom in the car, and I expected her to do something, to be like more defensive, but she essentially told me that it was my fault and that I needed to make sure it never happened again. They didn't bring it up to the school. They didn't do anything about it. And looking back, the primary reason why my parents didn't do anything about it, and specifically my mom, is because she was afraid of ruining the family image to the church and to the public. She even told my dad that nothing had happened and I was completely fine and the family didn't need to do anything about it. And the fact that she became a trauma specialist, licensed therapist later on after this blows my mind, because she also did the same thing in my early 20s when I was assaulted at work and held at knife point. I was also distraught afterwards, a crying mess. I didn't know where else to go. So I came home at the time I was living with her in her apartment, and she decided to pull out EMDR therapy tappers, all of her EMDR equipment, to do an EMDR session on me. It is extremely unethical to treat your child or family member as their therapist. It is so unhealthy. And I swear that I still deal with the bad connections that my brain made from that EMDR session today. It's awful. I don't think that my PTSD from that event would have been quite as bad if I had felt supported by her. But at one point she yelled at me, "This is too much for me. I just can't deal with this right now," and ran out the door and slammed the door. And I didn't see her until 2 a.m. that night. Anytime I had a friend, also, my mom would completely pathologize them. And I remember my first year of college, there was a friend who was saying things that would make me kind of uncomfortable, and I didn't know what to do. And my mom told me to tell my friends that my mom thought that this person was on the spectrum and that it was too triggering for me because of my relationship with my brother, and that I was going to set up a boundary and not hang out with them when this person was in the vicinity. And you know what? I hung on my mom's every word, and so I did it. I look back at my 18-year-old self, and sometimes I wonder why I fell for these things, but my mom was just perfect at putting words together and making you believe that this was like a true therapeutic intervention, something that she had studied and really believed in, when it was really just straight up manipulation to completely isolate me. I remember telling her about some of the things my friends were going through, and she would even send me handouts and therapy worksheets to give them. And when I would give them to my friends, like she said, of course they would be weirded out and shut down and not want to talk to me. It was honestly, looking back, I can't help but think, if you study therapy, you study psychology, you should know that that is not something that builds up a friendship or a relationship. And I can't help but wonder if she was trying to isolate me on purpose, because that's what narcissists do. I remember that one of my other coaches in my extracurricular activities, she had a problem with, because she felt like he was always asking her for unsolicited advice as a therapist. The hilarious thing is that this coach, come to find out later, did not think my mom had that good of advice after all. He was actually really into Alain de Botton, which is a philosopher who has the exact opposite philosophy as my mom had. And the tension between my coach and my mom that time got so intense that I had to quit lessons. And it was horrible. I lost a lot of opportunities because of the way my mom interfered in my relationships with her desire to be a therapist. I was also once really excited about this career opportunity that I had with a very prestigious person in my profession in the area. And my mother, instead of asking me how she could support me or being excited for me, immediately started by asking if I could take her business cards with me and promote her practice. Now, any child of a narcissistic mother knows what it's like to get your appearance absolutely picked apart. When I was around 13 or 14, my mom sat me down when I was in my pajamas and a sweatshirt and I wasn't wearing a bra underneath, and told me that I needed to always make sure that I was wearing a bra and looked put together around the house, because she didn't want me to be a distraction or a temptation for my dad and brother. And to me, this was highly disturbing. I loved my dad. I loved my brother. They'd never done anything creepy to me in their entire lives. And I didn't understand why she was saying this. It made me feel so disgusting. So I was deeply disturbed and crying, and my mom proceeded to belittle me and said that I was being sensitive, that I should have known this, that there was nothing wrong with what she said. And overall, it was just an absolute nightmare. This is just really concerning, given that now she works with a lot of victims of sexual assault and sexual abuse in her practice. She was always obsessed with appearance, which I think is really ironic, because she actually treats eating disorders in her practice now. But when I was growing up, she meticulously measured her food, obsessively worked out, and was always commenting on my appearance. I went through a time in my life where I was struggling with an eating disorder, and I was eating and tracking my food at around like 12 to really, it didn't get better until I was 20 or so. My mom knew that I was eating 600 calories a day, that I was working out for over 2 hours a day. It got so bad that I lost my period and people were really concerned about me. Even my doctor told me that I needed to start eating more because my body was under extreme stress. And my mom, at the same time, in the same breath, was telling me how dainty my shoulders were, how jealous she was of my body, how I could literally be a model. And she stopped saying all of these things once I started weight restoration. And the entire time when I was sick, she was telling my dad that the doctor said I was totally fine. It was honestly, again, really sickening. She was always so focused on that outward appearance. And I think for me, it's really upsetting to see. I confronted her later in my life and said, Mom, you really facilitated my eating disorder. You encouraged me to keep going with it when my doctor said I needed treatment for it. And her response was, well, I don't see what I would have done to contribute to your eating disorder. I treat eating disorders. I know what they are. You didn't have one. There is no better manipulator than a therapist who's also a narcissist. As a child, there was a specific medication that I was supposed to take, and I remember telling my mom over and over and over how sick it made me. I have multiple chronic illnesses, and it significantly exacerbated my symptoms to take this medication. And it was not until I was in my early 20s that between my dad and the medical records, I actually found medication bottles and proof that even during the time when I was telling her how sick the medication was making me, she was asking the doctor to increase my dose and telling the doctor just how effective and wonderful the medication had been for me and lying to me. Like I've mentioned briefly, I deal with a lot of illnesses, and from the time I was a child, even up through now, and it's gotten worse over time. My mom believes that my illnesses are completely psychosomatic because of whatever trauma I went through, which is ironic that she recognizes that I went through traumatic incidents, even though looking back, she didn't ever do anything about them, but then justifies the fact that she didn't do anything about them. But I digress. She thinks that is what caused my illnesses. And she also thinks that when I was younger, the reason I was sick was because I was dealing with ADHD, and that was that. In reality, she also at the same time was giving me medications that were making me sick, then pathologizing and telling me that I was experiencing anxiety and depression symptoms, when in reality, I was experiencing a physiological reaction to the medications that she kept giving me. When I came out as a lesbian, my mom was absolutely horrified. And she told me during family Thanksgiving not to tell a single one of her family members. I was really upset about that because I was so happy that I had found a wonderful partner, and it destroyed me. It wasn't long until she found a reason to kick me out of the apartment I was living in with her. At the time, I was only 19. And because of some intense family situations, I really hadn't had a chance to get my feet under me. Her reason for kicking me out was so that my brother could have the one room that I was staying in. I did not have anywhere to go. I couldn't live with my dad. I couldn't live with my mom. At that point, my extended family on my mom's side had all been really distant from me ever since I came out. I lost many of my friends and community when I came out, and so the way I saw it, the only option I had was to live in my car. Come to find out later on, she never had my brother stay in that room. It was empty the entire time I was gone. My mom, at the same time, needed some help at her practice, encouraged me to quit my job so I could work at her therapy practice. And I did it because she had just kind of like put this spell on me and made all these amazing promises to me about working for her. And I, at the time, was willing to do it, but there were two catches. I could not, at her practice, talk about being married to a woman. She didn't even want to know I was married. I couldn't even wear my wedding ring. And the second stipulation was that she was going to pay me for my work I was doing once her practice was in the green financially. She said they were doing really bad and on the verge of closure, but once her practice was doing well, I cared about her so much. I said, I don't want you to lose your business. Let me help you. Don't worry. Once you succeed, like, you can pay me back because I know your practice is going to do well. It's just going through a rough time right now. Let me help you. So I did a bunch of free work, but come to find out the entire time that she was getting this free labor from me, she actually was making over 6 figures and And it wasn't long before I found out she had rented a house in the most expensive neighborhood in the area. During my wedding, whenever I was getting ready to get married, I ended up eloping to my partner because she made the process so miserable. I called her and told her I was engaged. She told all of her friends to contact me and tell me not to get married. And so I had an influx of messages. My mom is really religious. Messages telling me that I was wrong, that I was evil, that I was going to burn in hell for my relationship, that I was being disrespectful to my mom and I should listen to her. And it was honestly so stressful and humiliating during a period of my life that should have been the happiest time. And she came over to drop off some quote unquote mail at the apartment I was living in with my partner. And while she was dropping off the mail, she burst into tears in the car saying that she was always looking forward to helping me pick out my wedding dress, helping me get ready and organize the wedding, and now she would never get the chance to do that, and I was ruining her life, and she just couldn't come to a ceremony if it was between me and a woman. And she said, it's not because I am mad about you marrying a woman, it's because you are not 25 yet. Because as a therapist, she said, as a therapist, I know that your brain is not fully developed until you are 25. I gave her another chance when I turned 25 just to see how it would go. And sure enough, it was the exact same thing. Meanwhile, after this all happened, she changed her practice website to say that she was specializing in working with parents of LGBTQ kids that had just come out through a Christian counseling lens. And that made me want to vomit, genuinely, because the way she had handled my situation had been so abhorrent. And for her to be instructing other parents to do the same thing she did was absolutely disgusting to me. It was horrible. And it also felt like she was trying to gain traction for her practice based off of me, taking advantage of me. And at this point, she still hadn't paid me for any of my free labor for her either. It wasn't until I was no contact for about 3 years that she finally sent me a Venmo, but the Venmo was for $300 and not the $10,000 that she owed me. And that was the moment. That was the last straw for me. I was done after that. And it honestly felt like a relief to be done with her because she had put so much pressure on me to be someone I was not my entire life. I didn't even know who I was when I stopped talking to her and went no contact. Now, fast forward to where we are today. I have a younger sibling with special needs. And recently my younger sibling was going through a hard time. And so my mom offered to take my sibling with special needs in. My mom tallied up every expense that my special needs sibling cost her and put it in front of my special needs sibling and said, how lucky is your dad that he doesn't have to pay for any of this anymore? What therapist thinks that that is good to do for your child? She knows what she's doing. She knows how conniving she is. And it's honestly really disturbing that somebody who studied psychology and knows the effects of doing this would do that to a child with special needs. She would call my sibling down at 10 or 11 in the night to help her with things for her business. And when my sibling said that they were tired or that they didn't feel up to it, she told my sibling in therapy speak, it makes me feel taken advantage of and manipulated and abandoned when you don't want to help me after all I've done for you. Again, therapy. She is a therapist and she knows how manipulative that is, but she has a way of saying it where it makes you feel like you're totally crazy and that she is the one that's just setting a normal boundary. Come to find out, just a few days ago, my mother had taken tuition money from my sibling's education savings account, used it for her degree. My sibling went to her and said, hey, can you help me pay for my school like you promised me when I was younger? And she said, oh, I said I'd pay for your master's degree, when she fully knows that my sibling is not going to get a master's degree. So she took his education money and then won't follow through on her promise. And even worse, at the same time she's saying this, she is buying a custom-built house. A custom-built house. and saying that she cannot afford to help my brother make his school payments, which are the equivalent of like 3 therapy sessions a month for her. Recently, my sibling with special needs went to therapy, and my mom was complaining that she had to take money out of her emergency savings account to pay for my sibling's therapy, which, keep in mind, this was at the same time she was building a custom house. And then she proceeds to send letters to my sibling's therapist telling his therapist what to work on with him, which is a huge conflict of interest and violation of privacy, and also speaks to her ego. It's not ethical. It's just not something that you do. Like, you, again, can't therapize your own children. She had already tried to do EMDR therapy on me. She had already tried to facilitate therapy sessions between me and my coaches. She had already tried to facilitate therapy sessions between me and my friends. And now she's trying to take control of my brother's therapy sessions. And there are some things in life that do not need to be pathologized. And there is a difference between using the knowledge you learn in school to help people and using the knowledge you learn in school to fit your own agenda. And unfortunately, I feel as though my mom has always used her knowledge as a therapist to skew things to her own agenda. I think her narcissism has kind of progressed over the years, and now she's even getting these grandiose delusions, one of which being that she has clients that are so high profile within the government that there are going to be terrorists or people with bad agendas after her, and so she doesn't want to give her house address to anyone. She's installing the state-of-the-art security system. She believes that somebody involved with a local business down the road, a local small business, took her face and made an AI deepfake of her to make her say things that were not correct. And this is borderline like unbelievable given the area that she's in and the fact that she serves very wealthy clients and also lives in an extremely wealthy and nice and safe neighborhood. And yet my sibling and I were left eating cans of beans and being told that she did not have funds to help my brother with his special needs or his school or help me with my health or my illness or my bills. I just don't know how people have children and treat them this way. I think one of the classic like narcissistic parent quotes that I heard a lot was, "I hope that you have a daughter like yourself one day, and then you'll finally see how hard you were to deal with." And you know what? Like, I do hope that I have a daughter like myself one day. I think she'd be pretty awesome, honestly. And I'm learning every day to find more grace and compassion for myself. And every day I see more and more of the truth of how much my childhood was manipulated, how much I saw things through my mom's lens. I felt so reliant on her for validation that she literally proofread all of my texts for me until I turned 18. I think one of the biggest things for me has been realizing, because my mom is a licensed therapist, she knows the script. She knows how to say what I want to hear. And so I have had to maintain strict no contact, very strict boundaries with her, and recognize I've given her a chance to come back to my life a few times, and none of them have ended well. I think it's taken a while for me to get to a place of acceptance that my mom is probably never going to have the capacity to have like empathy or change or ever see that she did anything wrong. In one of her recent texts to me, when I brought this all up, she said that she is, quote, open to the possibility of maybe taking responsibility for some of the things that happened, and wants me to go to therapy with her, and she wants to choose the therapist. That is an offer I'm definitely not going to take her up on. Like, are you kidding me? But it just goes to show there's never going to be, you and I, my friend, if you've stuck around this long, I bet that you have had some personal experiences or some family experiences with a narcissistic parent. And between the two of us, we are never going to get the closure that we want from our parents. The only place that we're going to find that closure and validation is within ourselves. It is time, my friend, to move past relying on our parents for validation, for comfort, and to find those skills to give ourselves those gifts, give ourselves the closure, and to find ways to make peace with the things that have happened. knowing that nothing that you could say, nothing that you could do could change the way your parent sees you and your parent feels about you. And so in some way, I had to move far away. I had to move on, and I had to find a way to let it go and find ways to love and like myself enough on my own with my own validation. I had to grieve for a while. I mean, when this all came crashing down on me, particularly realizing that she had stolen $10,000 from me under a false pretense, I had to take 2 days off from school. At the time I was in college, and I felt like I couldn't even go to class for 2 days because I genuinely felt like my entire life had been a lie. And I had to take time to go through those stages of grief and reconcile what had happened within myself. Nothing had changed, right? Like my life story, nothing about it had changed, but my knowledge surrounding my life story had. And suddenly it was like I was seeing the truth, and I developed all of these new feelings that I had to sort through and grieve. And it was really painful, but I think at the end of the day, it was really worth it. There's this concept called reparenting, and it's been really helpful for me to just focus on providing the validation and self-compassion and care to myself that my parents should have given to me, talking to myself like I wish a parent had talked to me, giving myself the support that I need has been really wonderful. One thing that I've really been into lately is the idea of mindful detachment, learning to just observe my life story as a life story. I can't change it. I can observe it. I can acknowledge what happened. But what I choose to do with my emotions, chemically, there's studies that show emotions only last 90 seconds, chemically, neurochemically in our brains. So whatever thoughts I have after that rush of emotion are up to me. It's like the concept of the second arrow, right? I don't want to shoot the second arrow and prolong my suffering. And so recently, as I've been processing all of this, I've really been focusing on detachment, on just letting things be, accepting them, and not shooting the second arrow, not prolonging my suffering. And it's been really helpful. Well, if you stuck around this long, I hope that there is something about this episode that made you feel like you're not alone, or answered your questions about what it's like to have a therapist in your life who's really manipulative and narcissistic. This is something that I never thought that I would share, but I love the fact that this is an anonymous podcast. Yeah, I'm really grateful that you listened this far, if you did. I would love to hear if you have had any similar experiences in the comments. If you want to hear more awful things, we cover all sorts of topics. This was my first episode where I talked about anything personal, but feel free to subscribe and follow and like and comment and rate us if you are on a platform where you listen to your podcast that lets you rate us. And I hope that you'll come back to hear more awful things, and we will see you next time.